My name's James, and I've never seen Taxi Driver.
Hello everyone and welcome to I've Never Seen. I'll be your host of this video, Ben. Joining me, as always,
Dan.
James.
And Christian.
While our friend James is a film fan, he's looking to branch out a bit, see a bit more. Some of the classics that a film fan really should be watching, you know. We're looking forward to seeing what James's opinions are on these films, mainly because, you know, you might have some interesting ones, maybe ones you consider controversial. And so we thought today, let's talk about Taxi Driver, 1976, the same year as Rocky, Network, Carrie, All the President's Men, Logan's Run, The Enforcer, The Omen. It became the winner of the Palme d'Or in the Cannes Film Festival, nominated for 4 Oscars that year. It didn't win any, but it then went on to become very, very popular, very influential. It's considered culturally significant, historically significant. It was put in the Library of Congress in America, and it was also selected for the preservation in the National Film Registry. You know, De Niro, Scorsese, their first big collaboration. James, what did you think of Taxi Driver?
I think Taxi Driver was utter shite. Like, no, but legitimately, I think I'm as excited to hear from you guys on this one as you are from me. Because, you know, sometimes you'll watch films and you'll be like, okay, it wasn't for me, but, you know, I see why people like this. I'm so curious as to hear why people like this film, because I think it's just awful and pointless. Literally, I don't see anything redeeming about Taxi Driver.
Okay, so Ben and Christian, before we go into what James is saying, what do you guys think of the film?
Perhaps this in itself will be controversial, but I think there is a set of films where I'm like, I really enjoyed this film. It's maybe not up there with my favourites, but I did have a good time with it. I never want to see it again. Taxi Driver fits into this. It's one of them. I've watched it once. I don't ever have to see it again.
I fully get that.
I don't know why I find it just watchable, and I quite enjoy just watching him go about his almost day-to-day life in this grim world, watching this, like, not well man. Like, he's not right, is he?
You talking to me?
I'm curious if I would enjoy it as much if the music was different.
Music is good, I'll give you that.
What I love the most about the film is the music, and I find the film very dreamy, and, like, you're gonna hate this, James, I find the film like a warm blanket.
That says so much about you, and none of it's good.
That's so weird.
Can kind of see where everyone's coming from. I like this film. I don't think it makes for particularly comfortable viewing. There are certain themes and scenes in it which are uncomfortable to watch and everything, but that's the point of the film almost. It's to kind of like be a bit confronting, I suppose. You can see that he's obviously not like firing on all cylinders. He's got some issues from, we don't know, you know, he's just this taxi driver who we don't know why he's the way he is.
I always assumed it was because he's come back from the Vietnam War and just has horrendous PTSD.
I don't know if this man ever served in the war.
That question is one why I really like the film, because it's like the whole thing has a dream fantasy aspect to it.
I personally don't think he served in the army, and my main clue for this is the guy in the back of his taxi who's like, oh yeah, drops the N-bomb really early on the conversation. He's like, yeah, they live there and they're fucking my wife and all this, so I'm gonna go blow his hand off with a 45 Magnum. You know what a 45 Magnum does? All this and that. And then when Travis then goes to buy a gun, the first thing he says is, have you got a 45 Magnum? Like an excited kid who doesn't know firearms, but this is what he's heard.
Does it to the security guy. He regurgitates all the guns to that guy, the Secret Service guy. You mentioned that guy who talks about blowing a hand off with a 45. Do you know who that guy is?
He's not an actor, I'll tell you that.
It's Martin Scorsese.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. And clearly no one scripted that scene because he just keeps saying the same thing over and over again.
It's funny though, because it's funny how like we interpret scenes, because I find that scene really uncomfortable to watch, because even Travis sat there like, what the hell is this guy in my cab not doing anything, making me want to sit with this, watch this woman?
It's a scene that serves a purpose to the overall kind of plot and theme, though. The whole story, the whole theme is about like he's slowly being warped by this like horrible environment that he lives in, filled with these like gross characters, and you know they're all in the back of his taxi. He meets so many people and everything, and he meets this guy, Martin Scorsese's character, and he's just this like horrible guy that just represents like how the city's like rotting. You know, he goes on about goes on to the politician, Palpatine,
yeah.
Palpatine.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
I did find there was a few moments where I just drifted into my phone.
Same.
And that was one of the scenes where I was like, okay, he's just saying the same things over and over again. I can probably just skip the rest of this scene and still get what's going on.
Yep.
But I don't know, that's because like this film was created before mobile phones, so like people are coming to it with like a completely different mindset for a scene like that. They're not thinking what do I need to, what's the distraction, you know, that I can be distracted by. They're just kind of like watching the scene, and it's not this kind of, it just is what it is, and it's, you know, we're talking about it now, so it's obviously kind of like impacted us in some way. It's a film from a different era and has a different pace to it. It's much slower than what we used to now.
The pacing's not my problem. I wouldn't say I was bored. Like, I wasn't sat there watching, like looking at the watch because like, bloody hell, this is going on long. I just didn't find the film interesting.
The pacing was absolutely my problem. It's the longest hour and 49 I think I've ever sat through.
I don't know. That's about the dumbest thing I ever heard.
It's like a different mindset that you need to go into films like that with slow films. You need to kind of just immerse yourself in them in a different way. That's why Ben kind of enjoys this film, I think, because it's more about like the atmosphere and the overall, you know, the overall feel, the cinematography, the colours, the environment, the you know, it's about those things. You need to immerse yourself in them to actually get what you need from that film. If you're constantly thinking what's on my phone kind of thing, it's gonna bore you.
The first time I saw this film was in the cinema when they re-showed it. My phone was off, we're in a dark room, perfect environment, and I still hated it.
I think I both appreciate and didn't appreciate the like pacing of this film, because I really like long shots. Whenever I see a long shot in anything, I'm like, great. I love the fact that we're not cutting, we're like really getting to sit in this environment. My favorite scene both times probably watching this film is the conversation he has with Betsy on the phone, where the camera just suddenly pans away and just sits on an empty corridor. And I really like that shot. I'm fully invested in that conversation, and it's weird to not be like completely focused on Travis in that moment. But then like there's other shots where it's like just a long continuous or like just a long conversation, and I'm like, they're losing me. They're losing me towards the end of this scene.
Do you know why you like the long shots in this film, Christian? Because they're the only ones that didn't cut to a continuity error. Say what you will about characters and themes and all that, there are bits of this film that aren't well made, in that there's continuities off. You can hear sound audio is crackling in the back and the static. Like, there are things in this film that on my degree at university, if I'd handed that in, I would have been marked down for. So I don't see why an actual filmmaker shouldn't be held to the same standards as student films.
I think that's like a thing where if you can't suspend your disbelief, those details...
That's the thing, like noticing continuity errors is what pulls me out of a film, because suddenly I'm like, oh, I now feel like I'm watching footage, not a film.
This is a thing, though, with Martin Scorsese films. I was watching Wolf of Wall Street the other day and noticed a ton of continuity errors. It's not about, oh, that movement doesn't match up with that movement.
But it should be.
No, because
that's the basics of filmmaking.
It's not in this case, though, because like a lot of Martin Scorsese films pick the best performances that basically bring out the best of the actors, you know, the best of the scene, and if there's a few like continuity errors here and there, you've retained a better performance, you know?
That's a very convenient way of saying, oh, it's fine that my film's badly put together, though. When we were making films, it would be so easy for me to go, oh, I want to just use that take and not worry about it all fitting together right. Like, it's such a convenient method of using.
I wonder if you would have that opinion if your lecturer didn't tell you to not work.
No,
That's bad.
But it's the basics of filmmaking. Like,
But what is the basic of filmmaking to tell a good story?
but you should be doing both. There are so many films out there that do both. Why can't he?
It's beautiful.
They've made the conscious decision to say we don't really mind about continuity errors because we want the best performance. Like we could have a perfectly, a perfect scene with perfect continuity, and it might not be as good in terms of performance. But what's more important, the continuity, or you've got Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci and whoever, all these actors.
It was Jodie Foster in this.
I thought Joe Pesci looked a bit strange in this film, actually. Great performance, though, you've got to say.
Don't ever go over my fucking head again, you motherfucker, you.
Are you gonna throw away the best bits of their performances, and go, we can't use that take because his hair's a bit different?
They should, as an actor, be able to do that performance take after take after take. That's the point of being a great actor.
His haircut must bother you then.
I didn't even clock the haircut, if I'm honest, other than the bit at the end when he shaves his head and then he comes back with a
His
full
hair changes lengths and styles throughout the whole thing.
Okay, here's my question. Why does this film need to exist anymore? It's a story that is out of
Destroy
date
it.
and it's being told, and we don't need this story anymore.
Do you mean this story?
Just the story of the man who's almost harassing a woman and then takes it upon himself to just shoot up. When he's a hero at the end, having watched what this man is like, I don't feel like he's really going, oh, I need to save this girl. He almost is like, oh, I want to be the good guy with the gun. It doesn't feel heroic. It feels like he's living out his fantasy. It feels like it's for him, not for anyone else.
I mean, that's a perfectly valid kind of reading of the film, though. You don't have to like what the film is saying in order to still identify it as a well-made, good film.
My interpretation of the story has always been that when he starts off as a cab driver, he clearly has mental issues from the beginning, but it's as he stops taking his pills and as the film goes on, things get darker and he starts noticing more things, and I think that's where his mind starts exaggerating certain things, and that's where he becomes more unhinged and erratic until he gets to the point where he buys all these guns and decides that his destiny is to die in a shootout with some pimps.
If you interpret the ending as real, as reality, the newspapers, he gets heralded as a hero. I just love that idea that not earlier in the day, if he was successful, he would be heralded as an absolute villain and would go down in history as a famous assassin.
Why did he want to kill Palantine? Is it just because he's Betsy's boss?
Yeah, it's because it's the idea of he tries to kill kind of the main, I guess, father figure in her life, or the man in her life is Palantine, and he fails at that, so he goes after the father figure of Jodie Foster instead.
There's just a few things in this film where it's it rubbed me the wrong way. It's why does that need to be in there? The pimp, and I get that we're supposed to, it's supposed to be gross, but it goes too far of when the pimp's saying all these sexual activities you can do with this 12-year-old girl. This is, like I said in the intro, I don't get why this film is so revered. I just don't.
I think because you've watched its influence. It's been influenced so much over the decades, it's almost imperceivable.
Why was it ever a thing? I just don't get it.
It's because of the filmmaking, the music, the individual character story. This is one of the first times this is... Now it's everywhere. Nightcrawler, Uncut Gems, Good Time, Joker. It's they did it again, a couple of years later. This is one of the first times you've had a bit of a grey moral character on his own, following him. Is it right? Should you like it? Is he good? Is he not? This is one of the first times it's happened. But because you've seen 40 years after it, to then go back, you'd be like, whoa.
But I love a morally grey protagonist that you shouldn't support but do. Breaking Bad is maybe the best television show I've ever watched. But Walter White isn't just a creep. I think that's the main thing. It's just a creep, and his attitude towards women and the whole just going in and shooting up places. I just think, and I don't want to sound like a proper wanker right now, but in today's climate of like all the sexual assault that goes on and the mass shootings, this is a film that we don't need anymore.
I see it less from that sort of point of view and see it as like, you have films like this and like Cuckoo's Nest coming out where it's like, oh, like mental health is a big, post-Vietnam War, like PTSD and stuff like that started to be explored a bit more, and it was like, oh, mental health is like this important thing, and if you don't help someone, then this is the path that their brain takes them down. I've more always seen it as like a character piece focusing on his brain and his mental health than the environment than the environment that he's in.
And it's also like, it's supposed to be unsettling. It's supposed to put you in the shoes of someone who we're not used to being in the shoes of. A lot of these older films, if you hold them up to today's standards, it's unfair because they're coming from a totally different place, but they lay the foundations, for what is to come and for what people build on, and they still have merits, it's still a good film, I think.
The weird thing is, though, I feel like I almost don't have a problem with Joker because of its pre-existing IP. You know that this person's supposed to be the villain. There's no arguments of, ooh, are we supposed to like this guy? It's like they've sympathetically done somewhat like one of the most famous villains, but I thought that was massively overrated as well, to be honest. I don't get it. I don't get why everyone lost their minds about Joker.
Because they hadn't seen Taxi Driver.
It is just mental how much... Copies is a kind word. Like, rips off is another one.
They put the audience in the shoes of someone who's like struggling in a lot of ways, and they also hold up a kind of a mirror to the current society and issues that are happening. It's really on the nose with the Joker, especially in the last scene where it's like, this is what you get if you, like it's really forcing the theme down your throat. Whereas with Taxi Driver, it's a bit more subtle and it's more reliant on, let's make our own minds about this character. But it's saying similar things.
I've never seen this as like a sympathetic film. I have just seen it as a character piece where they're like, we're going to put you in this character's shoes, make of it what you will. Is it all in his head? Is it all real? Does he deserve what he gets?
I will say, as much as I've shit on this film, it does do one of the things I love in a film, of where you're not really sure which parts of it do and don't happen. I really enjoy that, and I like that element of it.
How do each of you kind of interpret the ending from post-shootout, or even just the shootout? Do you think it's real? Is he dead?
I think he's dead, and then we see his sort of vision of what he hopes happens once he's gone, and I think that's exemplified by the fact that his hair is back to what it was like before he cut the mohawk in it.
I would agree. I think it is like a sort of hero vision, because the first bullet goes straight through his neck.
It skims, it nicks him. I think he even has a scar in the taxi.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
That's continuity there, James. That's good.
Well done. You learned it for the final scene. Well done, Martin.
He's probably dead. It's because the whole end of that film is even more dreamlike than the rest of it. There's a lot of things to hint that this is some kind of, I don't know, imagination or afterlife or something of that nature. It's not real, basically.
Part of me would like to pick and choose and say that he does die and the whole stuff with Betsy is in his head, but the heralding him as a hero is a real thing, just because
that's my answer. I like the cherry picking that he's a hero but he's dead.
Again, it ties back with the whole mental health thing. If they've completely missed the point that this man is seriously ill and they're like, oh, he's a hero, he shot up a bunch of bad people.
I'm trying you.
Would you recommend the film? Would you recommend that others see it? Should it be something that's, say, taught maybe in a film school scenario?
The only reason I think this should maybe be taught in a film school scenario is for the whole thing of you learn more from your mistakes than anything else. I think it should only really be used as an example of what to avoid.
I'd recommend watching Taxi Driver at least once. You might have a visceral, angry reaction to it like James, but at least you've given it a go, and maybe Scorsese films are for you.
It's definitely on that list of I'm glad I've seen it because now I have my opinion and I can know that I don't like it.
Yeah.
I'll watch any film for that. I always like to have an informed opinion on stuff.
But I would recommend the film. I enjoy the film. I think it's gross and weird, but interesting.
I definitely recommend this film. It's not for everyone, is it? Definitely not for everyone. I think students of film will probably appreciate this film. On the other hand, it's a film that's difficult to like in certain ways. Also, I understand what James and Christian, their gripes. I do understand their gripes.
For me, it sounds like you're arguing about it's a well-written script. And sure, like that I can accept, but I don't think the film is well made. It's not well put together.
No, because I think it's more important to retain the performances, and
maybe Martin Scorsese should be a theatre director then instead.
What Scorsese films have you watched?
This half of Wolf of Wall Street and the final act of King of Comedy.
That's mental. That's great.
Just extending off of that, Ben, the only reason James actually dislikes this film so much is because of what Martin Scorsese said about Marvel films.
I really went into this film wanting to like it. I don't think I've ever gone into a film wanting to dislike it, but when it's this easy to hate it.
And this man, this director.
Yeah.
The point of the show is to push boundaries with film taste and explore new things, different parts, different elements of film, and that's what we've done. And that's the great thing about this show and the great thing about this episode. So,
and the great thing about film.
So if you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed the film, let us know in the comments down below. Give us a like, give us a little subscribe. What films do you want James or any of us to watch next that we haven't? Anything weird, anything boundary pushing, things that we might not like, do let us know down below. And with that one, we'll see you next time. Goodbye.